let me do that.
Sure.
So I've made you a presenter. The
Thank
class
you.
is being recorded, so I will add guys as they come. So please, let's proceed.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning. Good afternoon, guys. I hope all is well. I know you're geared for your ATP exams, and we've all been there. As a way of introduction, I just like to tell you that we've all been there. It's one of those hurdles you have to cross in order to get to your desired career. So I just want to wish you all the best, even as we start. And we hope that by imparting this knowledge to you, other than what you've learned in class, we hope that by doing this, we are actually able to help you get further in terms of your exams and even just general knowledge. So we are going to start with the legal writing and its importance. Of course, we are following the course outline. I hope you can see my presentation. I'm sharing my presentation. We're following the course outline. I hope you can see. If at any point you can't see, just raise your hand. Actually, yeah, raise your hand and senior will see what you will hear, will see you and, you know, communicate to you, just hear what you have to say. Here's the presentation. So let's start with legal writing. And by now, through your undergraduate and even through your ATP, you've known that you really need words. In all that you do, you need words, whether they are spoken or written, you need words in order to do your work. Okay? It is the one thing, it is the one tool that you have to use. Whether you're in court giving submissions, whether you're in court, making petitions, whatever you do in your career, or whether you're in your office drafting, you have to employ the use of words. That is your tool. That is your tool, okay? So you also have to know how to communicate. And one of the ways of knowing how to communicate is how you place your words together. It's how you arrange your words. So we're just going to look at this little formula. I don't want you guys to really worry about the notes. I'll send the link to all the PowerPoints that we will that I will teach you in this class. I will send the notes to you. So if you do not have notes, do not worry. At the end of this class, you will have everything that we've gone through. So the number one thing you need to do, the number one thing you need to do as an advocate is to have a good choice of words, okay? And then this good choice of words, when you put them together, the result is effective communication. It is as simple as that. You just pick the words. You decide on what you want to say. Do you want to draft a petition? Do you want to draft a statement of claim? Do you want to draft a plaint? Okay. Do you want to do a case brief? Do you want to do a case analysis? Do you want to do the transactional drafting, which is contracts? You've done sale agreements in your conveyancing. What do you want to do? Then once you know your theme, what you're working with, then all you have to do is just choose your words, put your words together, and the result is effective communication. Of course, there's a broader way. There's a time where we'll have to expound on that. But for now, let's hold on to that, okay? So how do you communicate effectively? How can people look at you and say that you've communicated effectively? And what are these circumstances where you communicate effectively? Number one is when you're explaining something to a client, okay? The first step when you're doing your civil litigation is usually instruction. You've been instructed by a client. A client has walked into your office and they've instructed you. When they instruct you, there is always um, the interview face of the client. So you've really heard the client's story, and now you are supposed to advise this client, okay? You're supposed to advise this client. You can give a legal opinion. At the same time, you're supposed to move forward and be able to help this client. And one of the ways you do that is by way of a demand letter, okay? on behalf of the client. You're acting on behalf of the client. So when you're explaining something to the client, when you're telling them about the weight of their case, when you're telling them about the chances of them getting a remedy, that is one way of communication. Another way of communication is to get information from a witness. And I'm going to give an example with a criminal court. When you want to get information from a witness, there will be so many ways, but the moment you're in court, you will do, depending on which side you are, there will be an examination in chief, there will be cross-examination, and there will be a re-exam. How you post those questions in order to get information from the witness, in order to make your case stronger, is a form of effective communication. You have to communicate effectively, okay? Also, when you're in court, you want to compel the court, you want to persuade the court to believe that the story that you're telling is the story. You have to communicate effectively. If your words are all over the place, if your paragraphs are, one paragraph talking about a particular theme is paragraph one, and then you pick up after paragraph nine, and there's no connection in between the paragraphs, then that is not effective communication. Even the structure of your sentences is part of effective communication. I hope that by now we are on the same page, and I know you've done this in class. So what we are just doing is we're just adding that cherry on top of the cake, okay? So really, there is no difference between spoken words skills and written word skills. Many a time, you'll find that what you've written, say in a submission, what you've written is actually what you're going to present orally in court. So the context might change because now you're speaking, and in the other instance, you've written this piece of work down. So the context may change, but it is usually the same thing, okay? It is usually the same thing. So you need to really, sorry, let me just pull this up. No, 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 no. Let me just put it in a way that you're able to say this. You really need to look, number one, we are looking at the qualities of, of writing. We're looking at effective communication. So you really need to know about the qualities of writing. And what are the qualities of writing? Qualities of good writing. Number one is making choices. You don't draft in a vacuum, okay? You don't draft by accident. You don't just draft because people are drafting. Some of you, most of you are in pupillage right now. You've known that drafting is very important. Your pupil master will look at your work and they'll be able to decide if they're going to use the work that you've draft or not. So you don't draft in a vacuum and just say, see, as long as ninaandika, I just have to write. So you have to make good choices. And making good choices it involves doing research. You do a lot of research prior to the process of just sitting down and deciding to write. What is the other quality of good writing? It is clarity. You have to be very clear. You have to be clear. We have to look at your work and read it and say, this is what this author intended to say. You are the author of this piece. You as a drafter, this is what you intended to say. So we should see the way you've expressed your thoughts. We should see the way you've moved from point A to point B. We should see your introduction and connect it to the end and say, okay, this is what this person intended to say. This is what the communication was meant to achieve. So clarity has to be there on top of the list. Another thing is there has to be logical structure. There has to be logical structure. You can use paragraph to break down your work. You can break it in terms of sentences, which is even smaller, okay? And you can just make a good point without explaining it. You don't have to explain everything so that at the end of the day, your legal opinion is like 50 pages long. You can do 2 pages of a legal opinion and you will communicate better than the person who's been writing over and over again. There's something called verbosity in legal writing. That should be avoided at all costs. It is never a good thing. It is never a good thing. You've heard this saying, beating around the bush. Someone is not getting to the point as expected, okay? So for writing and even for reasoning, how you reason about how you're going to write. It is usually small, small links. And then these small links, they form a series and then they produce something called a logical chain. Okay. And you have to place these small links in order. Usually for most of your writing, you will have a beginning, middle, and end, depending on what you're writing. They will have a beginning, middle, and end. And then for lawyers, for advocates, we use the FIRAC. We use the FIRAC rule. So when you're thinking about the FIRAC rule, you have to employ logical thought, you have to employ logical explanation, and you have to employ logical structure. Okay? Let's look at spelling. Your writing should be free from spelling errors, okay? Because lawyers are really respected, and the word is revered, not revered, like feared in the society. People believe that what lawyers say is gospel truth. So sometimes when your document is full of errors and you're working with a client or clients or an opponent or even the court, you're working with people who know the importance of good spelling, then it might just reflect on who you are. You know, sometimes you're judged by a very small error that you've made, okay? So try to eliminate spelling mistakes. By now, you've done your, fair share of writing. You've done maybe research or proposals in your undergraduate, and then you've done your group assignments, group projects. You know by now that writing is part and parcel of your career. The trajectory of your career is defined by communication. And one of the ways of communication is writing. All right. So you have to ensure you do not have spelling mistakes. And if it is really so bad, then you can turn to instruments like Google for research to verify spellings or, the way on how to spell some words, or you can use Grammarly, but just in a controlled manner. Make sure it does not change the meaning of what you intended to communicate. Okay. Another one is grammar. So spelling and grammar goes hand in hand. They go hand in hand. So your writing also should be free from grammatical errors. Just make sure that ni kazi safi. I look at your work like this and I want to read it. Someone else wants to read it. Everyone is drawn to your writing as opposed to people see your writing and they just throw it on a pile of other things that they will do when they feel like it. Okay? So you should look at your verbs, you should look at where your prepositions are, conjunctions, that those simple grammar rules that we learned in primary school, they really come in handy. They apply. How you use your verbs, how you use your adverbs, if you want to use the prepositions as I mentioned, your conjunctions, where are they? Where are your punctuations? Okay? Are your comma placed nicely to indicate that you've paused? Are your colons placed nicely to indicate that you intend to make a list of things? When you're done writing, did you indicate a period, like a full stop, to show that that sentence is over and done with? Did you begin a new paragraph? How many lines are in your, how many sentences or lines are in your paragraph? So those are very important when you're doing your writing. And punctuations I've already talked about. So punctuations is just full stops, comma, semicolons, colons. And actually, this is the part where I tell you, you do not really have to use semicolons and colons if you do not know how to use them. You can just use commas. Colons are used when you want to name a list of things. Just before you name a list of things, you use colons, okay? Semicolons is used to express a similar thought that connects to the previous thought. So it's two sentences, similar thought connecting to the previous thought. If you do not have to use them, you will be safe if you use a comma. You will be safe if the two sentences can be divided by a full stop in a way that the first sentence, you just place a full stop, get it over with, begin a new sentence. So don't go killing yourself over this. They say you work smart, not hard. So you do not really have to employ semicolons and colons. They can be annoying, they are annoying. Just retain the normal, the conventional punctuations that we know. Full stop, commas, question mark. We don't really use exclamation in the legal sense, but those are the conventional ones that we know for now, okay? Because a full stop in the wrong place can really spoil the connection between words, between your thoughts. And we will see, we have a table of an example somewhere up on Mbele. We will see what this person intended to say and what they said, and how punctuation and the arrangement of words messed up what they intended to say, and that really changed the meaning of what they intended to say. And then precision, you have to be precise. Just say what you want to say. Say what you want to say. I have read many judgments and what else? I've read even petitions. I've read them done by people who've been before us, people, people who've been before us. And we cannot say 100% that all of these pieces of work are precise. Some people just, they veer off from the original communication that they had, and they get excited. You can tell they're getting excited, and they begin quoting a lot of things which are unnecessary. Sometimes just one case law can suffice to explain your train of thought. Okay? You don't have to put 11 case laws to prove the case. Many case laws are okay if three case laws communicate a different point of your story, because sometimes you need three case laws to really communicate. Sometimes you need four. Sometimes you need just one. Sometimes you need just one. You have just quoted one case law, and you've done a summary of the holding of that case, and you're done. So precision is really important, because your work will be accurate. It will be accurate. We are able to see this lawyer, this advocate intends to say this, and they've said it, and they've given us places to look for, if we want to establish that this communication is the way he intends it to be. Okay, then there's an ambiguity. Just this is, use the words the way you intend them to come out. Okay, the way you intend them to come out precisely. Don't allow your words, if you read your work, when you're proofreading, when you read your work, don't allow it to convey another meaning, because words can have a lot of contexts. Words can have a lot of context. I don't know if in your literature you did something called that double entendre. People call it double entendre, some call it double entendre. It is people talking about furniture, but the understanding of the audience is something else. And for sitcoms, you can hear the audience laughing in the background, because it is conveying another meaning. And it's actually, for double entendre, usually it conveys a dirty meaning. Okay? So do not allow your work to be ambiguous, in a sense that it conveys a different meaning, it is interpreted differently. The interpretation should be narrow. So you have to exercise non-ambiguity when you're writing. And then we have conciseness. Conciseness, avoid repetition, avoid crutch words. Eh? Kila saa you write and then you put there, and then you say like, a lot of crutch words, a lot of repetition, a lot of long-windedness. Just go to the point. Okay, the flow, we want to see the flow. We don't want verbosity, we just want you to be concise. We want clarity. Tunataka kazi yako, let me say in Swahili, tunataka kazi yako ikue ndogo lakini ya maana. Okay, ikue ndogo lakini ya maana. So because when you are concise, even the people that read your work, because they have other things to do, they will read your work, they will understand, they will be able to process it in a shorter time, and they will be able to get to other things. They don't have to feel like your work is another burden in front of them. Okay, now let's look at completeness. Completeness, you've arranged your thing, you're concise, you've employed an ambiguity, you're clear, there's clarity we can see from your work. The arrangement is in a logical structure. Now we want to see if your work is complete. Your idea from day one, your idea from paragraph one, when you connect it to the last paragraph, they are clear and they are complete, and they completely express your idea. Okay, and completeness really goes with conciseness. Those two things, They always go together, okay? So you have to be concise, but you also have to be complete. The idea is, do not now cut short your ideas because you're running to be concise. Do not cut your ideas short. Lay down your ideas in a manner that they all bring out what you intended to say. They effectively communicate, okay? So elegance, the moment you see elegance, of course, you think of something beautiful. It is a quality that is usually, for the most part, associated with beautiful ladies, okay? So your work should be elegant. Think of yourself, if you're a lady, if you're a gentleman, think of your sister, think of your mom, think of a beautiful woman in your life. You can describe them as elegant. So import that to your work and say, my work must be well written. Okay. And you see, elegance comes with practice. You start writing, the first draft is a mess. You probably end up folding that and throwing it to the bin because it does not give you um, a good opening phrase. It does not give you the mood to continue drafting or writing. Okay. So for your work to be elegant, you need to practice. You need to avoid clumsy phrases, and we will see that when we're talking about legalese. We will see that when we're talking about legalese and the flow of your story. If you are coming from Mombasa, I would understand you had to pass by Amutito one day, huh? And then all the way Emali, Nairobi. You're going, say you're going to Kisumu, okay? So you're coming the way the railway line vile huwa iko, we can see the towns. I do not expect you to be coming from Mombasa going to Busia and then I see Nanyuki in your work. So when you're talking about flow, flow is from point A to point Z. Your story connects. Your story connects, okay? And then shorter sentences, of course. Shorter sentences, try at least for you to break down the sentences in terms of paragraph, okay? And then paragraphs. And then your sentences or your paragraph, say your one paragraph must convey the same thought. Let one thought be expressed, okay? Let one thought be expressed in a sentence. If that sentence is too long, take the same thought to the next sentence, okay? Just ensure that when you're communicating, your thoughts are in the same place, but at the same time, you're able to break them down so that there's a transition. There's a transition. We can see that it's the same thought, but you've broken it down in order to have these chunks. You want chunks of paragraphs or chunks of sentences. You're breaking them down. You're breaking them down, but at the same time, the thought is flowing. And sometimes you'll find that someone will write a very long sentence, a very long sentence, so many words, and when you're reading it, they're saying the same thing. If you pick that piece of work, if you pick that literature and decide to edit it, you will write less than 4 sentences and it will still make make the same, it will still bear the same form of communication that was intended. Okay, so you don't have to write longer. You don't have to write longer sentences for it to make sense. Your sentences can be short and precise. We talked about precision. I hope you can see this. I want us to see a punctuation exercise very fast, okay? Uh, I'll just read here. Lawyers who work all the time are chronically depressed, okay? Lawyers who work all the time are chronically depressed. And this, I was talking about how people can interpret your sentences. Look at three ways. Look at three ways how punctuation can change the meaning of this sentence. Lawyers, comma, who work all the time, comma, are chronically depressed. Another way it could be lawyers, sorry, into brackets, who work all the time are chronically depressed, okay? Or lawyers who work all the time are chronically depressed. These three sentences all have different meanings. These three, they've been changed by the simple, they've been changed by the simple use of a punctuation, okay? Let's look at the shorter sentences exercise, okay? The person is writing, all persons except those 18 years or older. Person B has practiced elegance, okay? So person B just comes on board and says, each person under 18 years of age, okay? That is more of, we are moving towards the plain English direction, plain English direction, plain language or plain English direction. Instead of saying all persons except those 18 years or older, you said each person under 18 years of age. And if you look at your statutes, you'll realize that this has been used a lot. This has been used a lot. There's a lot of complicated legalese, okay? So shorter sentences can be achieved by just making your sentence or your words simpler, okay? Look at this. Drafteria, tra Transylvania must upgrade. Imagine maybe this person had written, this person was writing a legal opinion for you. So Drafteria, Transylvania must upgrade. And then the elegant writer just comes and says, each state except Drafteria and Transylvania must update. You're just feeling, say upgrade, sorry, there was an error there. You're just feeling like this second sentence has been written with a lot of care. The person has taken the time to be precise, they've taken the time to be concise, they've taken the time to be accurate, and yet they have communicated. So there'll be more examples, and as I promised, I will also share the notes with you, so you will be able to look at them and get more understanding of what I'm talking about. So for you to be a good legal writer, for you to be a good legal writer or drafter, because you can do both or you will do both, you really have to write in a way that your reader understands, have an easy time. We've said that. And you follow the rules of grammar, okay? And you can also follow the rules of the form. Some of your writing and your drafting will be in terms of forms, and you've done forms in your conveyancing. You do a lot of things using prescribed forms, okay? So you follow those rules. And then we talked about precision. We've talked about beginning, middle, and end, because you have to plan, you have to have an organization, a logical sense, and an order, and you have to edit your work. We will look at proofreading, and there are stages of writing. There are stages of writing. You don't just draft in a vacuum. We've said that over and over again. There are stages, and we will look at that for you to get a better understanding. Then there's this example here of writer one and writer two. This legal writer one really wanted to go with the flow. And if you look at him, he has five sentences, five sentences, give or take, okay? But the second writer comes in, and in quick succession, they're able to give us three. They just give us three sentences, and they've communicated the same thing. I would just like to read this so that I can drive a point home. It is obvious that the defendant is guilty of the crime he was accused of. Look at the second writer, the elegant writer. The defendant is obviously guilty of murder. The first writer has not even told us the crime that was committed. First, a number of witnesses saw him run from the scene of the crime in a quick manner. Second, his fingerprints were found on the gun that was used for the murder by the police. Saizi ndio he's communicating. But this second elegant writer has already said it is obvious that the defendant is obviously guilty of murder. Okay, so let's continue with the second writer and see how the second writer was able to collect their thoughts in just three lines. Okay, first, several witnesses saw him run from the crime scene. Second, the police found his prints on the murder weapon. Third, tests showed that he had fired the gun within the last 6 hours. Finally, he could not produce an alibi. Accordingly, the court should convict the accused. You see the way this person has arranged their writing in a logical sequence. Ukienda huko juu, the person is trying to say the same thing because he's naming the series of events, but the person's work has been mad with a lot of words. They've used a lot of words, okay? So you will get this work, you will get this PowerPoint Do not panic. Let's move on to something called legalese. What is legalese? If you go to your Cambridge dictionary, your legalese is this language used by lawyers. We tend to use legalese a lot, okay? And usually it's a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing because sometimes we use them in legal documents because it is not for ordinary people. It is for us, okay? It is for us. So what are the characteristics of legalese? These are usually long sentences, often trying to cover several points, okay? And there is verbiage of verbosity. This is more words have been used than necessary. And then there's too many double negatives. And we will see examples of double negatives even in your statutes. We will take a peek and see they use too many double negatives when someone will just speak directly, directly. And sometimes they are overly formal. Sometimes they are overly formal. I remember the time when the Ocampo 6, Ocampo 6 went to The Hague, including former President Uhuru Kenyatta, Muigai Kenyatta, and our president now, William Samoei Ruto, when they went to Hague and I was listening to the proceedings in Hague, and they were overly formal. At that time, I used to say, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a lawyer. And I was saying, this is how I'm going to speak in real life. This is how I'm going to speak every day. Turns out you don't have to speak like that every day. But in some instances, you are required to engage in legalese because it is a formal way of us lawyers getting to understand each other. So let's look at one of the examples of legalese. In witness whereof the parties hereunto have set their hands to this presents as a deed on the day, month, and here and before mentioned. Okay? See the example. Then let's look at the other example. In no event shall the company or its directors, employers, or agents be liable to you or any third party for any indirect, consequential, exemplary, incidental, special punitive damages, including loss. You understand what I'm saying? The ordinary man cannot come and understand this. But myself and you, we are really just able to look at this and say, here, upper example one, they're just coming to an agreement and signing a contract. Okay. And then upper, the second example, we're just looking at liability. One of the things we are looking at is liability. And we know that. And that is an inside language between us, me and you. Okay. But the ordinary man does not know that, okay? And that's in some instances, like when you're doing a legal opinion to your client, when you're writing a demand letter to the opponent, you cannot use legalese. But in some incidents, we can understand each other perfectly with the legalese. So this is how your examinations will come. Your examinations will come, your questions for LWD. One of them may, I'm not saying will, I do not know what they've tested this year. So it may come in this form. They will write something like this and they'll tell you to write it in simpler English. Use plain English, draft in plain English, okay? So what you're just going to do is you're going to step into the shoes of an ordinary person and try to simplify. Just tell them what this paragraph is trying to say. Use the sequence of the paragraph to explain to them and say, here they're saying a company director or the employees or the agents will not owe any other person for any liability. Okay? And I'm thinking this is something to do with constructive notice. If it's constructive notice, look at it and explain it that way. You are aware that the objects of the company were this and this. So if you are aware, then you will not be compensated for any transaction that you do with the director, if that is what they intend to say. I'm not saying that is what they intend to say, but I'm giving example to bring you to a context where you understand what I'm trying to say, okay? So let's look at the criticism of legalists. And this is also a question that can be tested sometimes. They tell you to draft in plain English, and then they tell you why legalist is not ideal, why it is not ideal. So they're asking about the criticism of legalists. And this is the documents that are drafted are usually for lawyers exclusively. Just as I've said, you'll draft legalist and present it to a presiding officer, a magistrate, or a judge, and they look at it and they'll know what you're trying to say. Okay? They'll understand you. You'll send it to your, yeah, let's say you're for the you are uh, you are a prosecutor, you'll send it to the defense and they'll understand what you're trying to say. But the ordinary person will not understand it. Okay, legalists can also be very confusing, unclear, unnecessary. The example we looked at, aforementioned, they arraign, those words, they can be confusing, and sometimes they can be unnecessary, and sometimes they can hide very important information. Okay, because look at this, these are just people coming to sign a contract. Any execution you can see. Okay? These are people agreeing on something. And then when they write it for you, kwanza you read, you take off your glasses, you put them back. It can be confusing, it can be unnecessary, and it can hide pertinent information. Okay? And sometimes what happens to clients is they believe huyu ni lawyer wangu atanisimamia, I have nothing to fear. And then sometimes they enter into contracts without a complete understanding of the effect of the contract. Okay? They choose to trust the judgment of their lawyer. And if you are a good lawyer, you guys believe you're good lawyers. You believe you're good advocates. The same way you are good lawyers, you must believe that there are bad lawyers. Where there is good, there is bad. Okay? So there are some lawyers who do not, there are some lawyers who do not tell their clients. They do not explain the contents of the contract to their client. They owe a fiduciary duty to their client. They owe a lot of duties, duty of care, but they do not exercise these duties when it comes to the client because they put their stomachs first. And you will meet them, they're out there. Okay. So sometimes when they draft this contract with, using legalists, the client is just happy at the end of the day. The client is just happy to say, niko na lawyer. Niko na lawyer. So they do not know what they are getting themselves into. And legalist does that to some clients. Okay. So let's look at examples of legalists. Words like aforementioned, albeit that, hereinafter, the foregoing, in the premises, save as foresaid, the matters are foresaid. You say those words. Mama Mboga will, you think Mama Mboga will know what aforementioned is? My Mama Mboga out here is just happy to say, lawyer wangu anaandika. Ule. Watamsikiza kotini, watajua sisi ni nani. Okay? So legalists can disadvantage the ordinary person. And that is one of the cons of legalists. But for the purposes of professionals in the field, just communicating, legalist is then ideal. So do not rubbish legalist. I'm using rubbish for lack of a better word. Do not rubbish it and say it should not be used. No, it is ideal in some context, but it is very unnecessary in another context. Okay. So let's look at plain English. Let's look at plain English. And this is just what we've gone through. Is this what we've gone through talking about clarity? It's just something that I want to take you through very fast here. And this is the plain language movement. Now, the plain language movement is a movement. Oh, I've repeated that. Let me take that again because we are learning legal writing and drafting. The plain language movement is a mission that was led by a group of influential legal scholars, judges, magistrates. Like they just come together and they say, you know what, hii legal writing yetu, it can be cumbersome, yachosha. Sasa kwa sababu yachosha, we are supposed to employ simple language when we are doing legislative drafting and transactional drafting. Transactional drafting, an example is a sale agreement, okay? when you think about transactional, think of one of the examples as a sale agreement, and we will look at them in, I believe, topic 5 or something. Okay. So they are saying, our consumers may not understand what we are saying. If you look at court forms, there are some prescribed standard court forms. And these court forms, we cannot put aforementioned kwa hizi court forms. We have to really dilute. We dilute the way that these forms or these documents appear so that the society is able to consume it. Okay? The issue of public interest. When you understand the issue of public interest, is that you owe a duty to the society. Okay? So we want them to consume this work in a way that is simpler, is quite complex. Okay? We, amongst ourselves, we want to sound very intelligent. Okay? We want to meet at gate C, and you owe me a professional, and you gave me a professional undertaking. You said hii wiki ni wewe unasimamia mambo gate C, but that will not apply to the society. To the society, we have to water it down, just water it down a little bit for the purpose of their consumption. So what do? We avoid technical words. We avoid archaic phrases. We avoid, you see, these Latin phrases that we put in our work. Of course, we rightfully do so. It is our duty sometimes to even go there in order to, push forward our agenda. We want to plead atropho convict, atropho acquit. Okay, we want to do all those things. But for the client, your accused, the accused person, the defendant, you just want to tell them in simple terms, uambie umewahi fungwa tena na hii makosa, ama umewahi wachiliwa kwa sababu ya hii makosa. The facts are the same na uliwachiliwa, so haufai kufungwa tena, ama ufai kuitwa kotini ati mashtaka yamefunguliwa tena. Okay, you want to explain it to them simple. Then I'll do that in English. Explain it to them like that, or even in Swahili, because for magistrate courts you speak Swahili and English, so it's okay. So those technical terms that are repetitive, hizo legalisi zote, the plain language movement wants to water them down. Right now, if you go and look at the forms for bail and bond, they're so simple. If you go now and look for warrants of arrests from the magistrate's court, very simple. They're just telling the OCS they're telling the investigating officer through the OCS to avail the accused in court. If the investigating officer did not avail the accused in court, then they're sent a summon to issue, and they are told, come to court on this specific day and explain why you did not avail the accused in court. Hakuna legalis. Okay? The thing has been watered down in a manner that if I wasn't a lawyer, if you want a lawyer, you would read it and say, oh, you police yakuleta accused kotini. So they've been summoned in order to come and explain why they did not bring the accused to court. Okay? And what is being done to promote plain English? One of the things we have when you're on your way to Ngong from Karen, Shopping Center, there's an institute there, Judicial Training Institute, where the judiciary go there and they get training. And one of the courses is how to draft in plain English. So in turn, it will reflect on how court orders are now drafted. Court orders are very simple. You hear court orders and you think it's hundreds and hundreds of pages. No, they're very simple. It could be just one line, depending on what we're talking about, because of course we have civil and we have the criminal, part of our legal sphere. Okay, so the forms have been made, the standard forms have been made simpler because they are drafted in plain English. And also another thing, when you go to the children's court, you'll find there that the orders are so simple, and a lot of the documents that need to be drafted, they've been drafted in simple English. They've been drafted in plain English. Everything is almost straightforward, you can understand, okay? And now, most of the documents that we have are being drafted in plain English. If you look at your 2010 Constitution, compared to the 1969, the repealed one, if you compare them, Ile 1969, you just see the English of the Queen plus legalese, okay? This other one, the one that we have, the one that we are very proud of, here, August 2010, it is simple English or plain English at work, okay? It is simple English. Things are being made simpler so that even mwananchi anaweza chukua constitution asome ndio asiseme yeye alisomewa. So when you're drafting in plain English, the first slide that we did, the conciseness, being precise, okay? You look at your grammar, your sentences to be short, okay? Those are the qualities that you employ. You use everyday English. Ile ninaweza kutana na konda na nimwambie, haujanipatia change kuwa serious. That is a plain English, okay? It's everyday English. Use simple structures. Then use first and second person. However, sometimes the rules of what you're drafting do not allow you to draft in the second and first person, because first and second person is usually I, you, okay? But sometimes when you're drafting, it has to be them, him, her, them. It has to be in the third person. It does not allow you to draft in the first. So you just follow the rules of whatever it is that you're drafting. So some of these slides that are passing are some things that we've already done in the first topic. So we are not going to belabor, but let's look at some of the examples of how legalese makes it hard for other people to read, and why we should use plain English for other people to read and understand what we are saying, okay? So someone may say, example, someone would say, at that point in time. At that point in time. Si useme tu when. Okay? By means of. Just say by. Okay? This word wasting idioms, easy. A lot of things are being used, a lot of things because we want to be very simple. We just want to go to the point. Tumalize tu, alafu people move on. Mtu anasema, and at that point in time, we went to the police station. You know, why don't we just, instead of this, at that point in time, this, just come and say, when we went to the police station, we have communicated. Okay? I want you to see this table. The word wasting idioms, whenever in a car. The fact that the defendant was young may have influenced the jury. Angalia vile the elegant writer ameandika. The defendant's youth may have influenced the jury. Ebu angalia all of these. Look at this. This first, the fact that the defendant, these are 4 more words in your sentence, which can be made short by just saying the defendant's youth. Okay? Let's look at the second one. The fact that she died. Huyu akakuja hapa akasema, mimi I'm not working hard, I'm working smart, akasema her death. These 2 people have communicated. And that's the difference between you and the other person, even in an exam room. When you're doing LWD, do not seek to impress the examiner by doing word wasting idioms. Okay? Short and sweet. This is her death. Okay, death is not supposed to be sweet, no pun intended, but her death. Look at the last one. This one is the one that annoys me. Hata sijawahi elewa kwa nini. He was aware of the fact that, and I've seen this being used in a lot of writings. He was aware of the fact that. Why can't you just say he knew? We have both communicated. We have both said the same thing. You have saved the time because you're an elegant writer. I am not. I want to go. He was aware of the fact that I want to impress the examiner. Believe me, this person for LWD, this person might just score more than you. Okay? Make it simple. And they'll bring you questions with this long, and they tell you to write them in simple or plain English. Make them, move them from legalese to plain English. So be ready to see questions like that. If you look at your past papers, you will see that. Also, you want to avoid redundant legal phrases. Null and void means the same. You can just say null. But the way we have been conditioned, as lawyers, we use null and void. We use last but not least, okay? We use over and over and over again. We want to use those redundant things. Of course, sometimes over and over again is a good one. It might be used for emphasis if you want to explain the extent to which your client was harmed, okay? But you can just say null or you can just say void. You do not have to say null and void at the same time. And then in your law of succession, you will see the last will and testament. It can be the last will. It can be the testament. If I were you, I would use the last will because it reflects more to the probate process. Okay. The witness has confessed and acknowledged. The witness has confessed. Okay. This contract made and entered into. This contract made on the 5th day of July 2024. Okay. The court hereby orders and directs the defendant. The court hereby orders. Hereby. The court orders the defendant. You have still communicated. I hope that those examples are making sense for you. You have communicated. We are both communicated, but Mumoja, one has decided to use redundant legal phrases. The other person has decided to be a proponent of plain English, okay? So how to spot bad construction. And this one, I'll just give you an example here. I want you to look at this example. You'll have these notes. I want you to look at this example. A trial by jury was requested by the defendant. The defendant requested a jury trial. We will learn about active and passive sentences, active and passive, and you will understand why that has been changed like that. Just put a pin on that, and we will get back to it. So when you're avoiding bad construction, you have to learn how to write in the active and the passive and when to do that. So here, when you get this form, you will look at legalese. And this is actually sometimes how also exams may come, legalese, and they want you to put it into plain English. Let's look at this. As stated heretofore, the landlord's conduct created, caused, and resulted in serious bodily harm and massive injuries, to wit, a broken and mangled left leg, lacerations to the aforementioned leg, and several broken digits on the foot attached to the side leg. In witness was the spouse of the injured party. I just want us to look at the final version, okay? I want us to look at the final version. The landlord's action caused serious physical injuries, namely a broken left leg with several cuts and broken toes on the right foot. The spouse witnessed the injuries sustained. It almost makes you laugh. Me at Kwanza, I saw to wit and I was like, okay, now we've gone England. To wit. And then a lot, and then they've had to use a lot of punctuations. There are a lot of repetitions. See, leg, 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 okay? This is how legalese works, and this is how plain English works. One way of doing this during your exam, because you can't study for this, you can't say that they'll bring this sentence and then I'll draft like this in plain English. One way is for you to draft before law school. Plain English is you drafting before law school because you got into law school and now you use heretofore, you use aforementioned, okay? You use to wit. Plain English is just telling you draft before law school. When you're in high school or when you are probably doing an undergraduate in something else, how would you have written this? A sentence, okay? And so we've talked about plain English writing. You will get this slide. You will get this. I'm just looking for anything that we have missed in this because a lot of these notes are in the first slide. Um, Of course, the do's and don'ts of effective writing, you use familiar words. I'm telling you, draft before law school. Draft before law school. The way you used to write your composition, literature, the way you used to do your grammar, do it before law school. And clarity, we've talked about. Words that convey your meaning, draft in ordinary English. English ya kawaida tu. Huh? English ya kawaida. Wachana na modus operandi. Just use the normal English, use short words, and then also proofread your work. Make sure you proofread your work. Let's look at this example of someone in the verbose spectrum and the other one in the simple spectrum or plain spectrum, okay? Submit an application. Alafu, someone else just comes and say, apply. Kama hata na madharau. Then another one comes and say, make a decision. Huyo ni mimi nimeng'ang'ana, make a decision. Then someone else will just come and say, decide. You can see the laziness here, but this laziness is so accurate and simple because you're required at that point to draft in plain English, okay? Make a payment. The other guy comes and say, oh, even though umeona, they just say pay. And then make an election. This person comes and says, choose. Here rain after, which might even mess you up kama unaandika kwa paper, you don't have autocorrect. Here rain after. And then huyo anakuja anasema afterwards. So that is really, I hope that is really able to place you in a, pedestal, kidogo na inakushukisha. One end, you are a serious lawyer who's using this legalese. And on the other end umeshukishwa, unaambiwa wewe sasa andika tu simple. It is able to place you exactly where you should be and when you should be. I will send that document after, of course, I need to tweak it a bit because of the format. This format is quite confusing. Let's look at something called gender neutral language, okay? Let's look at something called gender neutral language. And anytime I'm teaching this topic, I usually tell people, feelings, weka kando, okay? Feelings, weka kando, just put your feelings aside. This is really for you to do your exams. And this has nothing to do with toxic feminism and toxic masculinity. I've seen a lot of this banter on social media, okay? So it does not matter how old you are, but at some point, you must know that language has been used as a tool of oppression and empowerment, liberation for women. It has been a good thing and a bad thing, okay? It has been a good thing and a bad thing. And as a background, I usually tell my students, these offices you see, these classes that you're now going into, the four walls of the classroom, at some point they were not built with a woman in mind. It took a very long time for women to be able to vote in the US and other countries. It took a very long time for Kenyans, Africans, to allow girls to go to school. There had to be campaigns. Take your girl child to school. I remember that campaign, reading about it. I was not around to, witness the campaign, but reading about it. So at that point, anything that was being written, any literature, had the man in mind. Look at your Bible for Christians here. Man shall not live by bread alone. A man shall leave his family. Okay? It is written with the man in mind. And what is the explanation by the male authors or the male proponents of language? They're saying, no, it is supposed to be neutral. It's supposed to mean both man and woman. Okay? But the woman is saying, no, you're marking us as invisible. You're marking us as subsumed. Okay? You're just reducing us. You're saying we don't exist. Now, this is the women saying. And they're saying this is a masculine agenda. You do not want to include us. And anytime you have to include us, anytime you're specifically saying women, then it is because you're marking us. There is a problem. There's something we've done wrong. Okay? So because of this, a lot of organizations, a lot of authors, a lot of activist groups decided to campaign for gender neutral language, not just in the legal sphere, but in other places too. Okay? They decided we are going to campaign because now we are being told, we are being grouped that anytime they refer to a male, they say they have included us. We don't want that. We don't want that. We want gender neutral language. Okay. So for us to understand gender neutral language, we have to understand gender biased language. Gender biased language is the one that excludes women, and it wants to center itself on the male. It wants to center itself on the male. So women are feeling like this gender biased language is demeaning them. Okay? It is demeaning them. So what is gender neutral language? Gender neutral language will avoid referring specifically to either the male or the female gender. Okay? It will include everyone, but you will not know whether it is a male or a female. For example, if I say I'm going to see them, I am going to see them, you're going to wonder, them, is it a he or a she? Who is them? That is gender neutral language. And a lot of organizations are really pushing for this. And we also had even the feminist movement in the 70s. If you've done the feminist school of thought, you will realize that they've written so many books, they've written so many articles, they've done so many campaigns, and these campaigns are just supposed to gear at language that is inclusive. Language that is inclusive. It does not specifically refer to a specific gender, but it includes all the genders. And the history is right here in my notes, which of course I will send to you. Okay. We've had people like the American Philosophical Association. Okay. We've had the American Bar Association trying to work towards attaining gender neutral language. Okay. And I want us to look at some of the examples, and it will allow me to look for a better document that will enable you to see this note. I prefer this one. I hope you can still see the presentation. I want us to just go, after speaking briefly of the history. Of course, no one will ask you about the history. That's why I've just rushed through it. I want us to learn about how to employ gender neutral language. So just give me a minute and we can start here. An attorney should present his argument in plain English. I want you to see that example. An attorney should present his argument in plain English. The first thing that has been done here is that this his is catering for a man. Okay? This his is catering for a man. So what do you do this to cure this gender biasness that has been employed here? You say attorneys should present their arguments in plain English. You're talking using the third person, okay? You're talking using the third person, or you're using the pronouns, okay? Attorneys should present their arguments in plain English, okay? So you're using they, their, them, their. These are third person references that you use, okay? You can also use anybody, everyone, instead of she and he, or you use they, okay? Let's look at another example. The holding suggests that a defendant waives his, look at his, okay? Let me just highlight that, his constitutional rights only through an affirmative act. Look at the cure. Look at the cure for us to get into gender neutral language. Look at the cure. The holding suggests that the defendants waive their constitutional rights only through affirmative acts. We have communicated the same thing. Only here we were catering for one gender. And it's not better bado kama ingekuwa ha, okay? It's not better kama ingekuwa ha. The thing is, the gender neutral language is not how to cater for the female or the male. The idea is, ebu tupatane, let these things apply to both genders. It's not about, now let's cater for the female and forget about the male. Because most of your books, most of the books you've read, most of the statutes have male-dominated language. You will see in I think that even in civil procedure rules, you'll see a lot of him. Civil Procedure Act, sorry, not rules. Civil Procedure Act, you'll see him, 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 him. You look at the Evidence Act, him, 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 him. Penal Code, him, 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 him. When do they mention the woman? When do they mention the woman? But you will look at the Penal Code, and when we are talking about infanticide, abortion, eh? When they are talking about, killing of an unborn child, all of a sudden they recognize the woman, okay? All of a sudden they recognize the woman and they tell you the offense, and they tell you the years of conviction, you know what they're liable to, the sentence that they're liable to, okay? So those are some of the things that the gender neutral language is out to, let's say, out to balance out, so that when they refer to a person, when they refer to a person, then it represents both the male and the female. It represents both the male and the female. So what is another way that we can avoid this? Now, the first one, we said use the third person pronoun, which is the they, and we've given an example. What is the other way of avoiding this gender biased language? How do we use gender neutral language? You avoid gendered generics. Tuwache kusema masculine, the feminine. Tuache kusema policeman, policewoman. Say police officer, okay? Wacha kusema waitress, waiter. Say server, okay? Wacha kusema air hostess, nani. Just say steward or whatever name you will have been given. Stop saying actor and actress. Say performer. Because if you want to use the gender neutral language, if you want to employ it, and you decide to say all the actors and actresses, your English is going to get complicated. Utaanza kusema all the actors and actresses should bring his or her costumes before tomorrow. But you can just say performers are expected to bring their costumes tomorrow. Okay? So avoid such names. Kitambo, by the way, Kitambo, because of social construct, me, I used to think nurses were women and doctors were men. Okay? So if I go to a doctor and they give me a woman, najua huyu ni nurse, the real doctor is about to come out. So some of these things, they get into our heads. Okay, they get into our heads. I used to see maybe late 90s, early 2000, I used to see women climbing the pulpit to go and preach, and I'm like, no, pastors are supposed to be men. Women can't be pastors. And there was an evangelist called Werimo Nelson. So for me, in my limited, let's call it limited, because I didn't know, that's all I knew. I didn't have much to work with. I used to think, why is she not in the kitchen? Okay. So believe me, these things go deep. These things go deep. Look at this, the generic words. Man needs food. Mankind is the best creation. What about womankind? Okay. So when you're doing your LWD, for your other units, you can walk away. But when you're doing your LWD, no one will ask you to draft in in gender neutral language. But you have to have that in mind. Unaona, this third person that I'm talking about, that third person pronouns, they are very safe. The day I learned to draft in that, it's very safe. It will, you will need to, for the most part. You may not find these gender marked terminologies. You see, this chairman, chairwoman, nini, you may not find them. However, when you find them, know that you're supposed to say, instead of mother and father, you're supposed to say parents. Instead of chairman, chairperson, instead of chairman and chairwoman. Okay? Instead of congressman, member of Congress. Instead of king and queen, you say sovereign. And then another thing that I remember is that some forms, still government forms, they tell you to indicate whether you are a you're a Miss or a Mrs. Okay? But for the man, it's just Mr. It does not matter. You know what this means? This means you are unmarried, and this means you are married. And the form will ask you to indicate so that they know your marital status, okay? So, Ebu, look at the way these things have been psychological. This thing is asking for your marital status as a woman, okay? For the man, it doesn't matter. The man acquires this title once he becomes a man. For you, you have to change your title from Miss to Mrs. And when that form asks you for this, they automatically know your marital status. So these are some of the things that the proponents for gender neutral language are fighting for. They were saying, do not put, actually the miss here unmarried is this one. Do not put Miss or Mrs. in our forms. Wachana nayo. Just let us be Miss to indicate that this is a woman. Okay? To indicate that this is a woman. So I will send you these notes on gender neutral language, and you'll be able to see what to use instead of what. We've talked about the pronouns. And when you go through these notes, you will also see examples. Like there are examples here of, let's just read one. A litigant shall file his written submissions 3 times before the hearing. And this person would have just said, litigants shall file their written submissions 3 days before the hearing. This communicates. It communicates the same thing. It communicates. Aya. If you also want to do gender neutral language, you have to avoid using the article a or the, because it will force you to define a gender. Okay? Let's see. An advocate, here we've used an advocate, should file his brief in good time to avoid time bar. Okay? An advocate should file the brief in good time. Sorry, I've confused you. I'm saying you avoid, let me check that again. Scratch whatever I have said. You avoid this, you avoid this gendered pronoun, okay? Avoid this gendered pronoun and use article a or the, okay? An advocate should file his brief in good time to avoid time bar. In his, we can see this gendered pronoun, okay? case 2, an advocate should file there. You're using article there, okay? You're using article there, the brief in good time to avoid time bar. Here in case 2, this advocate could be a woman or a man. But here it is definitely a man, okay? Another way of attaining gender neutral language is using passive voice. Let's look at case 1. During weekends, an advocate shall be allowed to file her brief in the registry. We just know that this is a woman, okay? Because you've used active voice. Let's look at the passive voice. The registry shall remain closed. Therefore, no filing shall take place. You have communicated and you have employed the use of gender neutral language, okay? Let's look at how to use it in terms of paired pronouns. A lawyer should file his or her brief on time. It is a good way, the same way I was talking about actresses and actors should bring their costumes in time. However, they just look clumsy. Of course, you're catering for the male and female by using paired pronouns, okay? You're catering for them. But what are you doing? Your work is starting now to look clumsy, okay? Another way of doing it in regards to repeating synonym is the clerk keeps the court calendar, full stop. That is the person. That is the person. The clerk keeps the calendar, court calendar, okay? Who you clerk, you come again and repeat. That is the person who can schedule your meeting. So that way you have avoided saying he or she can schedule your meeting. Are you guys seeing ways of using gender neutral language? We started all the way Apuko, sindio? We decided all the way Apuko. We said you can use the third person pronoun, they, okay? We then said you avoid gendered terms like waitress, you use server, okay? Actress and actor, you use performer. We came and said you use article a or the, okay? Article a or the. It kills any pronoun yenye ungetumia kama his or her, okay? And then here you use both, okay? Here you use both. Sorry, let me just go back a little bit. Before using both, we've talked about using the articles. We've talked about using passive voice instead of active voice. We've talked about using paired pronouns, which you're using both now. You're using his or her. And then we've talked about repeating synonym. The clerk keeps the court calendar. That is the person who can schedule your meeting. And we can also use neutral alternative noun, which is like avoiding the gendered terms, which is server instead of a waitress, human or person instead of a man. And I'll tell you today, your constitution is very aware of gender neutral language. Have you seen your constitution? Have you seen any act passed the 2010 constitution? It is a person shall, okay? A person shall, any person who wishes, or they will infer the role of the person, okay? They will infer the role of the person. In your conveyancing, you will see a leso, you will see a lisi, senior. You will see such things. You will see a tenant and a landlord bado inaleta shida. Landlord bado inaleta shida, come to think of it. But all in all, your constitution is very progressive. It has embraced plain English. It has embraced gender neutral language. Now, when you look at it, I think you'll see it with a different pair of eyes. If this hasn't occurred to you, but I'm sure it has occurred to you because you've gone through this class, okay? And then you also, other than using this neutral alternative noun, you also eliminate the possessive relationship. Let's see an example. Case 1, if the seal is attached at or close to the time of execution, then it is likely the maker of the instrument directed his mind to the process of sealing. And this goes to succession, matter succession, probate. Shida yetu ni we think that the testators are men. But what does your section 5 say? Section 5 allows a woman, right? Section 5 allows a woman as long as there is capacity. So we have to move away from thinking that the testator is a man, okay? So that his is a deal breaker for proponents of gender neutral language. Let's see case 2. If the seal is attached at or close to the time of execution, then it is likely the maker of the instrument had in mind the process of sealing. Are we good there? Are we good there? The possessive relationship here is when we put his mind, we are giving power to gender biased language. But here, when we come and eliminate the possessive nature of it, and we say the maker of the instrument had in mind the process of sealing, there are so many ways you can tweak gender biased language to become gender neutral language. If this question comes in your exams, that by the time I mention this, you might not even need these notes. You will just look at it and say, here, me, I'll go third person. Here, I'll put an article. Here, I'll avoid gendered terms and use the general terms, okay? Here, I'll, all of those examples that we have said, I'll use both. I'll say his or her so that we are safe. Although his or her will look clumsy, so let me just find another way. These are all manners and ways that you can just use to avoid gender neutral language, okay? Another way is you leave the possession to implication. Let's see an example. At common law, a will operated to pass real property belonging to the testator when the will was made and personal property owned at his death. Again, we are thinking now this testator is a man, but let's just defend them kidogo. Kitambo, for the most part, women were not allowed to own property. Things have changed. So to defend our kitambo, this is in the past, okay? But now, see case 2. Case 2 is work. At common law, a will operated to pass real property belonging to the testator when the will was made and personal property owned at death. We have not put any gender. So this means that you, Madam Jane, can take ownership of this sentence the same way Sir Joseph is taking ownership of this sentence, and you don't feel left out, and you don't feel the need to carry a placard and say, hey, Rono versus Rono. They said every child is equal, whether they were male or female. You see, you already have a place. You have a place in the office, you have a place in the four walls. Inside the classroom, you have a chance at owning property, and you have a chance at bequeathing that property and giving it to whoever you want. Okay, so that's the gender neutral movement. Let's look at the whose solution. The whose solution, instead of using him or her, you apply the whose solution. Let's look at case 1. But the will confers no immediate authority on the executor. His powers, okay, mark his powers remain dormant until the occurrence of the contingency that awakens the testator's death, okay? Let's look at case 2. But the will confers no immediate authority on the executor whose powers remain dormant until the occurrence of the contingency that awakens the testator's death. So here, okay, here, the moment you put whose, you have removed the need to use his or her, okay? All these things we've said, the who solution is also used in the same sense. There's a whose and who, okay? Used in the same sense. Let's look at the example. If the testator makes a bequest with the intention that the beneficiary dispose of his own property in a particular way. Let's look at how who will cure this for us. A testator who make a bequest that the beneficiary's own property be disposed of in a particular way. You see the who solution and the who solution, they make your life so easy. So why do we use gender neutral language? Number one, we want to be fair. Fairness, your Constitution, Article 27(5), okay? A person shall not be discriminated against directly or indirectly on any grounds, and sex is one of the grounds, sex and gender, okay? So it is in your Constitution. It is not me saying. It is not your course conveners who are saying, okay? Look at the penal code. Look at the penal code. Hii hata tukisoma it's spiritual. Any person who, hapo they have started nicely, without lawful excuse, the burden of proof whereof, of course, it's legalese. I just want you to see this. Any person who, sawa sawa, wamekuja vizuri. We have seen them. We have seen them. There's something I'm looking for here. Hapa, here. Here is where they messed up, okay? The penal code was coming up on a gender neutral language. You want any person who? This was gender neutral language. And then the maker of this document, I can vote, I bet this person is a man, akakuja hapa akaamua upon him, okay? So for the most part, these laws, these laws, this is a kitambo, is it before 2010, or these laws that we've imported into our jurisdiction, they will cater for the man because of what society has been in the past. But you will see the elements of them trying to employ gender neutral language. Any person who, you see here they are using the who solution, and then they come here wanaribu story. Okay, so that is just but one of the examples. Okay, why else do we need gender neutral language? Reader's reaction. If your client is from FIDA, let's just say FIDA, or any women organization in the country, alafu you do a legal opinion that has him, gender biased language all over it, they will not come back to you. Readers' reaction. People do not want to be feel left out. If your client is a man and you, as a woman lawyer, you have decided that you're going to plaster her all over your submission or whatever it is that you're doing for them, they will not come back to you. And also when we use gender neutral language, we have clarity, because we are not going to tell a story about a woman who did something and we are using he and saying that he will cater for man and woman. No, we need clarity, we need precision. Of course, we've talked about precision. Okay, let's look at some of the annoying phrases that feminists do not like, and if they come in your exam, you will know that these are gender biased languages. Okay, a man-sized job. Are you implying that women are weak? See the interpretation. A manly effort. Oh, so women make no effort? Oh, took it like a man. Wow. Are you saying women are weak? A real sub-sister. Are you saying women like to cry and men don't cry? An old maid attitude. Oh, so you're just saying all the women have a problem. You see how these things come into play. These things hufanya tuna catch feelings for real. Huh? People catch feelings out here. A member of the weaker sex, and no matter what you're trying to say, I am your client, hapo you're trying to defend me hata ni kesi ya sexual offense. Do not ever refer to the other gender as a member of the weaker sex. Do not. These are do nots. You see these things that I'm writing here? They'll just creep in sometimes in your exam, and they will tell you to do some editing to make it gender neutral, okay? And you will leave this man-sized job here. An implication that women are weak. If we look at this, man's basic liberties. Can we just say basic human liberties? Here you can say a member of the opposite sex, or you can say woman or man, okay? An old maid attitude. Maid, what is the other name for maid? Servant. You servant, okay? This person is a real sob. Remove sister. Took it like a man, just say took it. A manly effort, just say effort, or a lot of effort, or a little effort, or no effort at all. Okay? Why do we say, who is the reasonable man? This is a person in a bus coming from Kibera to Nini. Why can't we just say reasonable person? The wisdom of man, this is an implication that women do not have wisdom. Say human wisdom. Okay? Then, of course, we said we remove words ending with man. And I just hope, like fisherman. Fisherman. You can find other roles that will cater for everyone. See here the example I was giving you. The female doctor walked into the room. The male nurse. In fact, people think that if men are nurses, then they've failed in life. They failed as doctors. Okay? So we should emancipate and just remove these things from our minds, the way they've been set up, the way we've been conditioned, and do better. Okay? So we have, I think, 2 more topics for today to go, but let's look at sexist modifiers, and then we go to the next topic and then the next one, because we have less than 20 minutes, and then we'll call it a day. What are sexist modifiers? Okay. These are adjectives that specify the gender of the described noun. And we've mentioned this huko juu utaona, but I just want us to see examples. Angalia, female judge. Yani in your head or in my head, I just believe that a judge should be a man. Lady lawyer, male nurse. Kwanza, that male nurse, it's usually used in a derogatory manner. This is a failed doctor, no wonder. It's a man and it's a nurse. And that's not the case. Some people just want to do nothing. They were meant to be there. I went to work, and then the lady cop, and then the lunch lady, and then the cleaning lady. You can say the cop, okay? You can say the lunch person. You can say the cleaning person or cleaning assistant or cleaning, you do not have to put agenda there in order to show us that huyu ni mtu fulani, because when you're doing that, it usually is a condescending attitude. It means that you want to bring this person you're referring to down, or you want to say they are less than. And people can read through your communication. Don't ever underestimate the power of people to read. People see right through you when you're communicating, okay? So I think that is gender neutral language. And of course, there are other ways you will get these notes. Feel free to enjoy them. Feel free to combine them with your notes. Let's look at effective paragraphs very fast. What is a paragraph? What is a paragraph? And this is very important. A paragraph, you need to know, because when you're answering your questions, you'll be doing them through paragraphs. And not only that, when you're also doing your drafting in your own law firm, or in the place where you're an associate or whatever, or the place where you're doing your pupillage, you have to understand the essence of paragraph, okay? So you're supposed to organize your sentences together so that they carry your idea, okay? It subdivides your work. Your work is 4 pages long, but it's just not a continuous writing within a page. You've broken it into reasonable chunks so that it is manageable. The keyword is manageable, okay? A person is able to manage it. They're able to read and pause. And actually, if you look at the science of reading, if I'm reading a novel, after every paragraph, I tend to either swallow or exhale, okay? So you're managing that. And when you're writing, a good tip is try and read that paragraph. And then before you transition to the next paragraph, try and see if you will have a reaction, a biological reaction to it. You'll either swallow, exhale, or you'll do something. You'll either take a cup of water to show that transition. Okay, so paragraphs are very different. They're never the same. It depends on the idea that you are communicating. So the subdivision will go with your idea. So how does a well organized paragraph look like? Okay, it has a single controlling idea, and that idea is a topic. Okay, it is a topic sentence. And let's see, a topic sentence, number one, it will support your statement. Wachana na hii thesis, that is just not. Let's just say it simply. It will support your statement. And this topic sentence here, all of them, when they are combined in a paragraph, they tell your story. They unify the content in a way that you're able to understand. Hapa person A alikuwa anasema hivi. In the next paragraph, person B alikuwa anasema hivi. Okay? You're able to understand that. So what are the functions of the paragraph? They help you to organize your writing. They help readers see and understand the organization. They help writers stay in control of their writing. Oh, hapa nimesema Njoroge alipiga Wanjiro, hiyo paragraph A. Paragraph ya pili, Wanjiro alitoka kwa nyumba akakimbia, akatoroka Njoroge, akaenda akaita majirani. Paragraph 3 majirani wakamchukua akaenda kwa police station. Paragraph 4, you are breaking your work, you're organizing your work, you're managing your work. So you're in control of your writing. These are boxes that sort out information. They make it manageable. We said the keyword is manageable, okay? And now your reader, as we said, your reader, they will exhale, they will take water, they will breathe because they are able to take your information and absorb it in manageable bits, okay? So paragraphs are very simple. If you ask me, you've been writing paragraphs all your life, but have you always wondered if you are managing, if you're going with topical ideas? Are you breaking it in terms of ideas? Or are we writing to finish? Okay? Sometimes you will write very long paragraphs and the reader will just say Piriton. Where I go to, we have this thing. We see very long paragraphs and we say, Kai, in Piriton. We avoid Piriton, okay? Because what is the effect of Piriton? It makes you sleep. So manage your paragraphs in a way that they are short, but don't make it too short because it will take away from your communication. Okay? Make sure that it is just the right size. Your reader or the recipient of your writing or work are able to manage your work. Okay? So there are two types of paragraphs. Paragraphs that narrate a series of events and a paragraph that gives examples. Now we are looking at types of paragraphs and structures. In terms of structures, a paragraph will have 3 parts, okay? It will have 3 parts. When you start that paragraph, it will have an introduction, topic, sentence. It gives a background information. Don't worry, we'll look at examples. And then it will have a body, and then it will have a conclusion. It has a beginning, middle, and end, okay? In short, introduction, body, conclusion, okay? That is one way of looking at a paragraph in terms of structure, okay? It will have a beginning, middle, and end. So what really happens is when you start here in the beginning, you're introducing. And then hapo kwa body, you will do the main idea. And then in the conclusion, you will finish so that you close that idea and you go to another idea, okay? Let's look at something called paragraph patterns. Kuna mbili. There is the hourglass shape and there is the V-shaped paragraph. Okay? Let's look at the hourglass shape. Usually, it begins with a general statement about the topic. Wanaanza hapo juu ka general statement. And then they start breaking now down. Okay? A general sentence. Then they break down, they narrow down, not break down, to the specific sentence and explain it. And they explain it conclusively. Wanamalizana nayo hapo kwa body, okay? Alafu, they come back and they conclude with a more general sentence or two about the topic. If you look at an hourglass, It's round at the top, very thin in the middle, and round at the bottom, okay? So the top gives you an introduction. The kamedlo hapo ndani, they've gotten now an in-depth direction, trajectory. They're going to explain specifically what they wanted to say. And then they just come out and say, now we are finishing. So they conclude, okay? You can draw an hourglass shape in your head, in your mind right now, okay? Do it in your mind. Then look at the V shape, and most people go for the V shape. V shape is the most common type in legal writing. And usually it begins with a general discussion of the topic, okay? General discussion. General discussion. We can be talking about Kenya. We talk about Kenya, it has 47 counties, okay? We talk about, and then we decide now today we are taking a look at Nairobi County, okay? We go, tunaingia Nairobi. Tunaingia Nairobi County na tunaenda nayo, okay? So we started with Kenya and 47 counties, and then we went to Nairobi County, and at that point we decided, nayo, it is a V-shape. It does not return to the hourglass form. Unaona ile hourglass form hiyo, the way it returns to conclude. Sisi tumeenda zetu, tuta conclude na Nairobi County. We will not go back to Kenya and the 47 counties in Kenya, okay? So there's something called unity and coherence in a paragraph. A paragraph must have its own topic. It must make a point. It must make a point. So tulikuwa tunapeana example ya tuseme kama ya robbery, okay? For each paragraph you're writing, you're narrating the deals of the robbery. From point A, the way this accused person walked in. What did the accused person find? Alipata watu wawili kwa nyumba, okay? After that, what happened? Proceeded to make threats and say da, 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 da. Alafu akafanya nini? Akabeba vitu akaondoka. Alafu akafanya nini? Tukakimbia, tukaenda kuripoti polisi. You must break these sequences. You must break this series for each topic to stand on its own, okay? But as much as they're standing on its own, pati ya nyumba ya kuvamiwa na kupigwa tofauti, okay? Pati ya kwenda polisi tofauti. Pati ya polisi kufanya investigation wakaenda wakaarrest huyu mtu tofauti. Pati ya ID parade tofauti. All these paragraphs, when you decide, are they making a point? Yes, they have to make a point. Now that is unity and coherence. There has to be paragraph unity. Like all these paragraphs must, when they are joined, they must work together. And the paragraph itself on its own must also make sense. There has to be unity. Things have to follow a sequence in a manner that your audience, your reader is not lost, okay? Is not lost. Also, take note, don't be so excited to stray from the topic at hand. You're telling us about a robbery and then you start telling us, as a background, I bought that television in Dubai. See, I'd gone to Dubai. You have strayed so much that by the time we are coming back to what happened in that day, we are lost, okay? So a coherent paragraph, of course, elements must be connected in a way that the reader will follow the ideas developed, okay? So what do? You use familiar organizational patterns. You establish and use key terms, okay? And your sentence structure must also be coherent, okay? So how do your readers expect to see your work? Your work has to have a pattern. They have to have a cause and effect, of course. When you're doing these legal opinions, you usually find yourself, or letters to clients, or letters in general, you find yourself having this and doing this a lot. There has to be a problem and a solution, and they have to be in a chronological order. And I've said when we started, I've said for lawyers, you use the FIRAC rule or the IRAC. Okay, you use the FIRAC or the IRAC rule. That way, if you write like that, your paragraph will assume a required pattern, and it will make a story, and everything will fall into place. It will be coherent. Sawa sawa. As we are very safe, we have a way of just writing. Well, once you apply FIRAC, then you are good. Of course, you have to know that there are no rules. Nobody tells you you have to have 8 lines and not less than 3 lines in a paragraph. But it is reasonable. It is reasonable for you to try and make them zikwe at least usipite, do not pass 25 words. By the time you're passing 25 words, by the time you're passing 25 words in your writing, that's the least you can do. Do not pass, do not do less than 25 words. By the time you're doing 25 words, you have at least 3 lines, okay? And then do not do more than 8 lines. Of course, there'll be other suggestions in the notes you meet, but I have found not less than 3 lines in a paragraph and not less than 8 lines in a paragraph. In the practical sense, in the field, I have found that it works. Your books could say otherwise. And even you can look at a sentence and say, na hii sentence imekuwa mrefu, nimeandika sana. Let me find a way to break this sentence ikue chache kidogo. You can use discretion. This is now a discretionary thing. You just decide, hapa nimeenda sana, let me just reduce it so that it is something else. Of course, you will get these notes on paragraph. You will get these notes on paragraph. So usikwe na wasiwasi, these notes are there. Let's look at sentences. Let's look at sentences, and I want to zoom this so that it is bigger. Let's look at sentences and voice in legal writing and drafting, okay? So when they're saying voice, they don't say the voice that hii yenye natumia sai, hii sauti, okay? This is usually the subject verb unit, okay? This is usually, there's a subject, there's verb, there's the object part of speaking, okay? Verb is a doing word. Verb is the action. Let's understand that. Ukikumbuka kwa ile primary English, verb is the action, okay? And then now we have object, and then we have subject. So first, when you write a sentence, before we go very far, when you write a sentence, what I want to know, if I'm reading your work, I want to know who did what to whom. And you've learned this in seniors class, okay? Senior has mentioned this over and over again. Who did what to whom, okay? So now we have active and passive voice. In who did what to whom, we have active and passive voice. And an example of an active voice is the boy kicked the ball. The boy kicked the ball, okay? That is an active one. The ball was kicked by the boy is the passive one. I don't know if you see what the sentence is doing, okay? I don't know if you see what the sentence is doing. Usually, an object, let's start with a subject. A subject is the person doing the thing, who did what to him, okay? A subject. The verb is the action. Then the object is that thing that this action is being done to. I'm going to repeat that again. You have to know that we have subject, verb, and object. And in subject, verb, and object, we can write in active voice and passive voice. We can write in active and passive voice. And we are following the rule for whom did what to whom, or who did what to whom, okay? So when we are writing in active, we will start with the subject, verb, and object. An example, the boy kicked the ball. The boy kicked the ball. When we are writing in passive, the ball was kicked by the boy, okay? The ball was kicked by the boy, sorry. So the object takes it takes position 1, inakuja huku mbele. The object in passive voice, the object inakuja huku mbele. All these types of writing are very important. You will get a question telling you, write this in the passive or write this in the active. You have to remember that subject verb, I used to say SVO for active. Okay? I used to say SVO for active. The moment you learn SVO, then you know that passive will be the other way around. You don't have to learn the other one. Just remember SVO for active. Hizi vitu saa zingine they want formula, okay? So, if you're active, you do things. If you're passive, things are being done to you. Now let's go back. See active. The boy kicked the ball. It's the boy doing the thing. See passive. The ball was kicked by the boy. Things are being done to the ball. Okay? So active ujue tu watu wanachangamuka. You're doing things. But in passive, things are being done to you. And all these forms of writing are important. And it's very funny how important they are. And they come in handy. They come in handy. I'm so excited to tell you how passive kwanza is important, because you would wonder, why should we use a passive at all? Why do we need it? We can just use active and everything is okay. Look at an example of an active voice. The court granted the motion. That is active. You're doing things. Let's look at passive. The motion was granted by the court. Things are being done. Okay? So in example 1, you can see SVO. Okay? So there's subject, there's verb, and there's object. Okay? So active voice advantages. When do we use it? It is used because it requires fewer words and it shows a chronological order. Okay? The court granted the motion. Things are going in a chronological order. It is easier to understand. Inakuja kwako rahisi rahisi. It makes the writing more vigorous and lively. Okay? So those are the active voice advantages. Passive voice advantages, it makes your work wordier. There's a lot going on. You have to write a lot. Okay? And the reader sometimes anaweza kuwa they'll be lost. You know, they can tell what is being done because something is being done to someone, but compared now to active voice, anakuwa lost. They have to like reread the sentence. It usually happens when something is written in passive. You will find yourself rereading it. Okay, because the normal order, which is active, has been interfered with. So your your brain sees it, and your brain wants to reread it in order to understand it. Now, the part where I was so excited to tell you about the advantage of passive voice. If you are a counsel for defendant and he committed murder, and you're defending this person, you're defending this person, you will want to talk in passive voice. Okay, you will want to talk in passive voice, and I'm looking for. There's usually here's the example. Let's see the example. You cannot say the defendant slashed Mr. Robert 5 times with a knife. This is for the prosecution. This is active. You, counsel for defense, you want to say Mr. Robert was stabbed because, according to your understanding, it is not your defendant who did it. You're trying to get your defendant out, okay? So that is one of the places where you are required to use the passive voice. You're required to use the passive voice to sound more subtle, to avoid incrimination. You know, you cannot self-incriminate. Article 50 gives you the power in 49. Do not self-incriminate. Unaanza kusema hapo the defendant slashed Mr. Roberts 5 times with a knife. Mr. Roberts was stabbed. Sisi hatujui nani alimstab. He was stabbed. Visible wounds can be seen. Ndio huyu, he is healing. But it wasn't my client. Okay? It wasn't the defendant. So you use passive voice. So passive voice is very important. You might say, why don't people just write inactive? Until you have to defend. someone on the defense side, and then you will realize that passive voice is very important, okay? So let's look at the use of passive voice, the example here. The governor was told that 3 prisoners escaped from the state prison. It is not important who told the governor. Do you know why? Number one, they could be concealing the identity of this person. Or it is not even important because the governor knows it and the governor will handle it, and we are after chasing these 3 prisoners. We don't care who said it. So sometimes we eliminate that person because active would have said, Immaculate told the governor. So here, the governor was told that 3 prisoners escaped. Okay, so when you look at these examples of passive voice, you will realize that passive is also just as important as active voice, but you just have to know where to use them, and you just have to remember SVO, okay? Subject, verb, and object, that one is active. So the moment you know SVO is active, now passive is the other way around. Passive is the other way around. And there are examples, all these that I'm scrolling for you are examples that you will see during your free time. You will go through them. There are not so many. This PowerPoint is a small one, but it really makes sense. It's all you need to know about active and passive voice, all right? All right, let's look at transition. And then I think, senior, I don't know if I've exceeded my limit, but I think after transition, we can continue by doing week 2. Actually, the close of week 1, which is case brief and case analysis, and then we can do week 2 next Saturday. But now we look at transitions. Okay, so what are transitions? In order to join sentences, you have to use transition. Okay, and transitions serve an important function in any piece of writing. I'm not saying writing without transition. The reason why we learn languages is for transition. Right now, you don't know French. You'll walk into a French class and you think you know bon voyage, you know bon appetit. You know, I'm not saying them in the French accent, so don't quote me. You think you know mademoiselle, you know Monsu, you know the days of the week, have to make ready, until you have to construct a sentence. You're in Paris and you need directions. You need directions to go to some museum, and you'll realize you do not have the transition to those to construct that sentence. So we learn language through transition. Transition is a very important aspect of language, okay? So if you're writing, it is a sentence that will connect your idea for you to be understood. And it will connect those ideas in a sentence, and it will connect in a paragraph. And the reader is able to see how the lines of reasoning are advancing. Imagine if we were to say one word in language. We say, John, kill Mary. Mary, die. Police come. So you need to have a sort of transition, and transition could be from the conjunctions that you use, okay? It could be anything, and we are going to look at those. It starts very simple. Transitions start very simple. For you to be understood, for you to be seen to be advancing from one idea to the next, for you to be seen to be organized, for you to show us the clarity that we talked about, you have to employ transition in your writing, okay? So let's look at the types of transition. We only have 3 that we use in legal writing and drafting. 3.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, I think answer is muted. We can't hear you.
Where was I muted from? Sorry
I'm
about
not.
it.
I'm not sure. I've sent you a message. Can you kindly confirm?
Let me see where I was muted from.
The types of transitions when you started.
Oh, when we started transitions.
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so I'm winding up with the transition. Let's just go through transition and then we finish. So transition, as I said, these are used to join sentences. In order to join sentences, we use transitions, okay? So we have three types. We have generic transition, orienting transition, and substantive transition. If we look at generic transition, they're used to glue words together. They're used to glue words together. It's like if you take an example of two wooden boards and you want to combine them, so you use a nail. And an example is also indicate a new but similar point. Okay, you've written a sentence and then now you want to add something also. This shows that it is a similar point. It is new but similar. Okay. We can also use however. However is contrary. You say usually you've written a sentence, Ukoju, but you want to bring in a contrary point. You will use however. Okay. So this will help your readers. They will be traveling with you easily because they can see that you are using transition in your work. So they are moving with you. Then some of the most common types that are used, usually they're used to show addition. The most common types of generic transition, they're used to show addition, comparison, or contrast, like also. Okay. However. Okay. And sometimes they even they give you a further explanation, or they give you a conclusion. They give you a conclusion. Okay. So when you're looking at a lot of work that people have done, you will see somewhere that they'll do however qua sentence. However, and then you'll see also, and then you'll see something like in essence. Okay. So those transitions are called generic transition. And just let's just look at examples of generic transitions. And we have, you can say further. Okay. That one is adding a new point. And then to indicate a difference, you can say however, or you can say but, or you can say in contrast, or you can say alternatively. Okay. To indicate similarity, you can say like, as, also, similarly. Okay. And then when you want to illustrate or explain an idea, you'll say, for example, for instance, specifically. Okay. And when you're finishing, you can say, therefore, or finally, or thus, or in conclusion. So generic are very simple. You've seen them in day-to-day sentences. So let's look at orienting. Orienting transitions provide a context for the information that follows. Okay. They will help readers to locate physically, logically, or chronologically. And we are going to give an example. Stay with me for a minute. So these are ideas. They want you as a reader, you're supposed to see the ideas, or it's pointing you to the rest of the sentence. Okay. And so they are giving you a context to understand the information that follows in a sentence. Okay. And usually these are orienting transition is used when you're talking about time, dates, and those that refer to cases. Okay. Time, dates, and those that refer to, so you will find either case laws. There has to be time and dates for the most part. So let's see. On October 26, 2023, Leonard Thomas was admitted to Mountain View Rest Home and Retirement Village. You've seen the way we've transitioned. We've transitioned through date and time. Let's see the second example. At 2 a.m. on January 1st, 2009, John Wakioma, was arrested and charged with reckless driving and driving while intoxicated. And sometimes, if they do not give you the date and time, we've said they will refer to a case. In the instant case, there is no indication that the defendant intended to deceive the plaintiff about her rights under the contract. So we've looked at the generic. Generic, they connect sentences. We have however, but, also, in contrast, in conclusion, we have that. And then when we are looking at orienting, we are looking at time. On 10th of January, 19, something, on 20th of January 1960, Martin Luther was assassinated or something. No, they are orienting transition. So you start with the element of time and then you tell your story. You tell your story, and there'll be, of course, examples there for orienting transitions for you to look at. And now I want us to look at substantive transitions. Jack, Senior, have you tried to call me? Have I gone mute again? Hello?
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Yeah. So for today, let's do the last transition next week, and we just call it a day because I think I've exited with about 15 minutes. We'll start from there next week, and then we will continue to the next term. So are there any questions? I don't see any hand raised. Are there any questions? Or what you can do in the next class, you can ask questions before we start. Thank you so much. And Senior, I would like to hand over to you.
Thank you. So we can take questions. If there's any person with a question, they can just put up their hand, and then we can address the questions, and then we can adjourn and share the recording. So if there's a question, please put up your hand so that we can address it, and then we can